Welcome and thank you for joining me on the Me and White Supremacy virtual pilgrimage. My name is the Reverend John Borthwick, and I'm taking my congregation through a journey into Layla Saad's work, Me and White Supremacy. Every single week I post a video reflecting on what I'm reading and what's touching me or engaging me as I do this work, and seeking to stir conversation, encourage people to do their own work in the congregation that I serve. And so it's my delight to share these videos with you as I do this. We're entering another section. We're halfway through, and we're on the other side of that half. Allyship is where we're going to be focusing for the next 7 weeks. And so today's, from Layla's book, is what is white apathy, as we speak about and engage with the idea of allyship. So let me actually first define, as Layla does, how we understand this allyship. And let me quote her again. She quotes a definition of allyship that comes from PeerNet BC. Allyship is an active, consistent, and challenging practice of unlearning and reevaluating, in which a person of privilege seeks to work in solidarity with a marginalized group. Allyship is not an identity. It is a lifelong process of building relationships based on trust, consistency, and accountability with marginalized individuals and/or groups. Allyship is not self-defined. Our work and our efforts must be recognized by the people we seek to ally ourselves with. So it is an area that, as we do this practice of anti-racism and the work of anti-racism, the desire is to move towards being a good ally, being a good ancestor, as Layla Saad says. And in that iteration, I've also heard not just being an ally, but actually moving towards accomplice. And perhaps that's something, as we read through this journey, that might be something that comes up for us as well. I'm continuing to unpack and figure out and try to discern for myself, what does allyship look like? How does one move from allyship to accomplice as one does the work of anti-racism? And so as we continue to journey in this pilgrimage, I encourage you to think about some of these things when you hear those words out there about being an ally and being an accomplice. What does that mean for you? This week, week 15, we're going to be looking at what is white apathy, and it plays into how we move into allyship, or why we don't. Allyship, or apathy is this idea of a lack of feeling or emotion, a lack of interest or concern. And around white apathy, it arises as a self-preservation response to protect yourself from having to face your complicity in the oppression that is white supremacy. When I read through this, Layla's looking at a lot of the other stuff that we've looked at way in the beginning: white fragility, white silence, white exceptionalism, white privilege and colorblindness, anti-blackness, racist stereotypes, all the things that we've already covered. And she says, that's really the first 14 weeks have really been the foundation that we needed in order to now engage with things like concepts like white apathy. And unfortunately, I've heard white apathy over and over and over again in spaces that I've occupied and in communities I've served. This idea of, people get a little overwhelmed and say, well, it's just too much. Like, how are we ever going to change anything? About a year ago, I heard many people saying, how are we going to reverse 400 years of history? And so I guess we just don't. We don't even try. I've heard people say they feel overwhelmed by the experience and don't want to feel guilty if they're a white person who holds privilege and power. I don't want to feel guilty all the time, so I'm just going to avoid that. There's lots of people doing the work, so I don't need to. People are on the streets doing certain things and protests and stuff like that. That's not my space. I don't think I need to be there. I don't need to occupy those spaces. They don't need me. They don't need my voice. there also is this sort of disconnect, I think, that comes that says, if I don't get it exactly right, if I feel uncomfortable because I don't know if I'm going to do something right or wrong. Sometimes people correct me. I feel uncomfortable and disrupted when people do that. And so therefore I'm just going to step back and just not participate. It's not something for me. A lot of this relates to essentially holding that privilege and trying to maintain a system. The system's too big, so why would I even try to change it? As Layla speaks to, this excavation and confronting, is there part of a white apathy that comes from, well, if I actually work to change the system, if the system actually changed, how would that impact me? How would that impact the things that I've come to understand? Or, the system works for me. What if it changes and it doesn't work for me in the same ways it has always worked? So there's something within maybe some of us that is that fear that we need to excavate that and find out, is that really why we're not engaging? Because we're afraid that the system might actually change if we participated. And so I know that through my life, I've not engaged over my life journey. I've had the privilege of choosing when I want to engage and when I don't. And a few years back, I finally decided within my own self that I couldn't. This wasn't something that one dabbled in. This is a lifelong journey, a lifelong process that we've talked about over a period several times in these reflections. A decision, an intention of doing what is right and not what is easy, of not just choosing to dabble in this and then do something else. This is a decision, a course, a direction in one's life to learn more, to practice anti-racism, to begin to be somebody who might be worthy of the title of ally, to become a good ancestor, and may even be worthy of the label of accomplice in doing this difficult but work that needs to be done for the sake of justice, for the sake of equity, inclusion, all these different kinds of concepts that must be a part of the process of dismantling systemic racism for the better of our society as a whole, for all of humanity. Thank you for joining me on this journey.